I'm joined now by a great guest to break this down even further, and that's trial attorney and federal litigator Alexis Rosenberg. Alexis, thank you so much for joining me. This case is really heartbreaking. This is a high school senior. She was just months away from graduating. Now she's clinging on to life, but her family says there's really no chance of saving her. What's your reaction to this case?
Like you said, Elizabeth, it is heartbreaking. She goes to a party with a bunch of friends her senior year. This should have been a fun time in her life and so many things to look forward to. And now, unfortunately, she is in this situation and her family sounds like they're already in full-blown mourning process.
And even just what we know of the lead up to the shooting, from what we know, it was a fight over a girl. The suspect reportedly was trying to talk to, I guess, one of Kimber's friends. That friend told her boyfriend, then shots all of a sudden were fired. What's your reaction to just not necessarily the intent, but just how brazen this really was?
Well, it's very sad that we have teenagers, although the defendant in this case, it was slightly older. So why he was at what seems to be a high school party when I believe he was 24, 25 years old, there's a question about that as well. But what was the need to have a gun, as well as how quickly this just escalated from, somebody basically looking at their girl and then this dispute to shots being fired.
And what's your reaction to the intent aspect of this all? The fact that the defendant did come to this party with a gun. I'm trying to figure out kind of what the intent was for even bringing it to what was supposed to be, I guess, this party, a high school party at that. Not sure why he brought the gun, but what are your thoughts on that? And will that be used against him if this case were to go to trial?
So I'm not sure if he had a license for the gun. I also am not sure if Alabama is an open carry state. However, he had the intent, it's our understanding, or allegedly, to shoot the actual gun. I am not sure that he was charged with when you're getting into the premeditated part. It does not seem like this was premeditated, that he was going there based on what we know to shoot anyone. That wasn't his intent. But he did allegedly intend to shoot the gun. I guess allegedly at the individual who had looked at his girlfriend or at the girl. What is interesting about this case from a legal standpoint is that the girl, the victim at this particular time, has not passed. She's not
Right.
deceased. So we do believe that either they're in the process or it's going to happen that she will be pronounced brain dead. So we have someone here who has been charged with murder, but really we still have, and I hate to say it in this situation so coldly, but the body, she is still actually here. She hasn't been, she's not dead at this point as you and I, or it's my understanding, stand here. So the real legal interesting part is that someone can be charged with murder if the victim has been declared brain dead. And that is, something that you can be charged with murder if someone is declared brain dead in Alabama, even though I'm not licensed there. I did look this up because that wasn't interesting because, like you said, you started off, she is technically still alive as we sit here today.
Yeah, and do you think that that charge of murder was too premature? I see maybe down the line a defense attorney possibly poking holes in that charge, mainly because at the time he was charged, she is still considered to be technically alive, even though she's using an assisted breathing tube, all of that. But I am very curious your thoughts on whether or not the charge was too premature, even though, to your point, she is still technically alive.
I'm going to assume that she has already gone there. There's a process to declare somebody brain dead. I'm going to assume that process had already taken place and she had officially been declared brain dead before the murder charges were filed by the prosecutor. I think that the communication we may be getting is that that had occurred and the family has not made the decision to actually take her off life support. Somebody can be declared brain dead. And at that point, they are actually considered dead,
Mm.
and still be on or declared dead, officially dead at that point, and still be on life support. It is a very interesting factor in this particular case. I'm going to assume that's what's happened and why we have the murder charges already being filed.
And what's also heartbreaking about this is that her family says that even if she were to survive this terrible, terrible injury to her head, a gunshot wound to her head, that she would still have to have an assisted breathing tube throughout the rest of her life. She wouldn't be able to function how she normally would if she were to survive. But say there is that one sliver of chance that miracles do happen and that she is able to survive it and she is able to live a productive and healthy life, all of that sort. What changes in the legal process in terms of maybe the charges that he faces? And I know I'm thinking a little too optimistically here, given that her family is kind of preparing to say their goodbyes as we're recording this. But if there were miracles out there, what chances does the defendant have, do you think, about getting that murder charge dropped?
So to declare somebody brain dead, there, like I said, there's a process. It was put in place many years ago, I think sometime in the 80s, actually. And it's actually an act, it's a federal act on how you go about doing that. And then the Neurology Academy has come up with that. I have not heard of anybody once being declared dead that they come back.
Mm.
And so I don't think that that's going to happen. But hypothetically, let's say that did happen, then as a defense, if this person is somehow not brain dead, then yeah, I mean that would kind of be in a defense attorney's miracle from God to them themselves as a case, because that would be a defense to the murder charge. See, the fact that that there is that ability to declare someone dead and then have the murder charge. Otherwise, we technically, there would be a question whether there was a dead person. I mean, that to put it very simply.
Mm-hmm.
But that would only be a defense to the murder charge if that miracle happened, because we still have him shooting a gun into a crowd,
Mm-hmm.
allegedly possibly shooting it directly at someone else. So the charges related to that would still stand. That would only really affect the murder aspect.
Mm-hmm. And I know we do talk a lot about Kimber Mills, but I do know also that there were multiple other people that were shot during this incident too. But do you think that, because I'm trying to think in terms of maybe some reconstruction or things like that as they're piecing together kind of what happened, that there might be a possibility others could be charged too? Do you think that could happen?
Well, I think there's also probably going to be other charges related to the other individuals being
Mm-hmm.
hurt and shot. I mean, we don't really have enough facts related to if other people were in on this, if somebody else, and I don't believe I have seen anything that anybody else pulled out a gun. I don't think there's any allegations that there were multiple people shooting guns. I don't think necessarily that is going to have other people come into and be charged related to this situation. I do think there's probably going to be additional charges against the defendant because these other individuals were harmed.
And one thing, that I admired in a way about this story, because it really is horrific, is just how much the community came together to support the family of Kimber Mills as well as the other victims that were shot during this incident on over the weekend. What's your reaction to just the community and their outpouring of support for this 18-year-old girl who's about to lose her life, according to her family, as well as the other victims of this terrible shooting?
I mean, this is horrible. It's my understanding this was a tight-knit rural community
Mm-hmm.
where they were hanging out, was kind of a usual teenage hangout. I believe it was called the Pit.
Yeah.
So it wasn't unusual for them to be gathering there. And I think it is beautiful that the community is coming together to support this family that is really going through a parent's worst nightmare. I mean, you have your senior, you have all these high hopes for all the things that are going to happen. It is such a beautiful time in a child's life, their senior year of high school. And it really, truly is sad. And that's what we need to really focus on. And I'm glad the community is doing that on the family, helping them through this grieving process and being there. So that is such a beautiful thing that's taking place.
Yeah, because it's horrible to think about Kimber Mills. She should have been preparing for homecoming, later on prom, all of that fun last little bit of high school activities you can get before you go off to college. And from what we know, she was planning to go to college to become a nurse. She had just her whole life ahead of her, and then something tragic, terrible, and horrible like this happens, and now her family has to prepare for a possible funeral instead, and it's just completely heartbreaking. Alexis Rosenberg, I want to thank you so much for your insight into this case. I really appreciate your time today.
Elizabeth, thank you for having me as always.